when you don't feel good enough, what you create will never feel good enough either. And if you are on your journey to worthiness, I want you to know that you can just start by putting things out, even if it's a little bit cringy. By putting things out, even if you're like, oh, what's the response going to be about this if I say this? You're listening to the From Imposter to Empowered podcast. I'm your host, Jill Perrick, a business and mindset coach who specializes in imposter syndrome. If you feel like you're not as smart, capable, or worthy as you actually are, and that someone is going to find you out, then you've come to the right place. I went from being a struggling government worker, working my coaching business on the side, but feeling unworthy and burnt out, to making multiple six figures helping women overcome imposter syndrome so they too can sign clients, make bank, and have the business or career of their dreams. I am nothing special. I have a stuttering disability, ADHD, and I struggle with anxiety and depression. So if I can learn how to feel good enough and overcome my inner imposter, then so can you. Let's dig in. Hello, my loves. Welcome back to the From Imposter to Empowered podcast. I'm your host, Jill Perrick. I am so happy to have you here. And we are almost at the end of January in 2024. January 2024. We're not at the end of 2024. My God. And you guys, I have something so exciting to tell you. Are you ready? I am doing a live round of Unfiltered and Filthy Rich. If you don't know what Unfiltered and Filthy Rich is, it's my content course that I launched back in October of 2023, and the clients inside are absolutely obsessed with it. And I love coaching. I love auditing people's content, and I am so excited to announce that Unfiltered and Filthy Rich will be a mini mind style for 8 weeks. The Unfiltered Mini Mind will be 8 weeks where we'll be doing weekly content reviews, having content parties where we'll create weeks worth of content in just one sitting, and hot seat coaching calls to call in your most authentic and unfiltered self so you can translate that amazing self to content that attracts clients into your offers. I'm so excited for this. You can enroll as early as the 12th of February, and we will begin the week of February 26th. It's $15.97, pay in full, or 3 monthly payments of $555. And obviously you get the course for life, even after the mini mind is over. So in anticipation of the mini mind announcement, let's dive into today's episode of what to frickin' do when your content doesn't feel good enough. And today's episode is punchy. It's punchy. I'm going to try to keep it as quick as possible because there really is not a ton to say about it. And that is that what you create, the reason why it doesn't feel good enough is because you yourself have thoughts of not being good enough. And this came to me while I was pretty high and I was writing my book. So you guys know, I think I've talked about it on the pod before, but I am writing a book about imposter syndrome. And when I smoke weed, I get a lot of really good ideas, but because of my fucking ADHD, the ideas fly out of my head. Like, I will have an idea and I'll be like, this is so good. And if I don't immediately write it down or speak it or do something about it, it will literally fly out of my head. That's how it feels. So I'm like furiously writing my book the other weekend. And I was talking about perfectionism. I think it was the chapter on perfectionism. And perfection only exists in the eye of the beholder. So you know how they say that quote, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But if you go into a museum and you see all of the amazing art that is all over the walls, what is one thing that all of those things have in common? And I'm talking like every sculpture, every painting, everything. The one thing that they all have in common is somebody decided this is good enough to put into the world, and they did so. And if I'm going to trace that back to even something as simple as your Instagram feed, when I was starting out in my business, I would look at everybody else's feed and I would see like the colors they were using and the posts they were making. And it's almost like I was looking for permission to create posts in a certain way. Like, for example, how Simone Soul does, like, she screenshots just like things that she's written in her fucking iPhone Notes app and she uploads those. and it started to catch on because it was easy. And it's just like such a simple thing that she started doing. And then everybody was like, oh, I can literally just screenshot my notes app and post it, and that's good enough. And when you don't feel good enough, when your work doesn't feel good enough, when you at your core you feel like nothing you do is worthy or good enough, then it makes sense that you are going to hem and haw and procrastinate and avoid creating work of your own. If we also tie this into your online business, so let's say you're a coach and you are having a really hard time developing like a methodology or a process, or you have a lot of resistance around creating stuff for your clients, it's because you have the thought of it's not going to be good enough. And I want you to do a little exercise, and this is going to be good for you scrollers. I want you to go and like look at either like your coach's portal or like somebody who's really big, like a Mel Robbins or something like that, and just look at all of the shit that they are talking about and that they're posting about. And dare I say that some of it is incredibly mediocre. And I don't say that in like a bitchy way. I say that in the way that the only reason why you are allowed to consume that is because that person decided, I'm going to put this out, it's good enough. And to me, it could be something that's super mediocre. To you, it could be something that's fucking life-changing. And I can already hear you guys thinking, oh fuck, what if I put something out that is mediocre? But you're missing the point here. The point is that people are going to have opinions about everything, and their opinions are derived directly from their own experiences and what they know and what they think. Something that you put out that somebody could think, wow, that's super fucking mediocre, could be absolutely life-changing to another one of your followers. But the thing is those people don't get to decide unless you put out what you're doing and what you're saying. So I sounded so bitchy when I just said that some people post some really fucking mediocre shit. But for example, Mel Robbins just put out a book about high-fiving yourself in the mirror. That concept is so simple and so mediocre that when I heard that, I was like, oh, okay, like that sounds really simple. But I bet you that book and those concepts have been absolutely life-changing for people. So who am I to say, oh, well, just because it's mediocre, it shouldn't be put into the world, when that is life-changing art to somebody. And again, if we go into the example with the museum, something that's unappealing to me could be something that is so captivating to somebody else. But we don't get to even make that determination. Somebody can't be moved by your work unless you actually put it out there. Now, here's the caveat is sometimes you won't always know when somebody is moved. I actually uploaded an Instagram post the other day and somebody commented on it and said, Jill, I just had a big fucking breakthrough from what this just said and I'm crying. Like I am just bawling my eyes out. And that was amazing, and it's probably happened before, but somebody probably didn't comment on it. You know what I mean? With social media, we don't get that immediate validation or that immediate feedback, and we have to learn to be okay with it and learn to feel good enough for ourselves. And that is why this work that you guys are doing with me here on the podcast and what you would do with me on such a deeper level in one-to-one coaching is that feeling of being good enough no matter what you put out or what you do, and knowing that you are changing somebody's life and choosing to take the action instead and feel the fear instead and just do it anyways, because that is what gets the eyes on you and that is what draws people to you, right? And I also write about this in my book about imposter syndrome too, but how good enough and perfect are not real barometers, right? Like, we think that good enough and perfect are actual standards that we're trying to meet, but it's like we're trying to like reach the finish line, but the finish line just gets farther and farther away no matter how close we think we're getting to it. And that's because, again, perfection and good enough are not real places. They are actually things that we think and things that we feel. So what I mean by that is that when we decide this is good enough, I'm going to just put it out. This is absolutely perfect to me. I'm going to put it out. We get to decide that. There is no person or judge who can say this is good enough or this isn't perfect. We get to be the deciders of that. And this is so much easier when you believe in yourself. This is so much easier when you know that anything that you do or you put out, you are allowed to grow and change, and your work is going to get way better over time. Like if you guys scrolled all the way fucking back, like I think we're on episode like 129 or something. If you were to scroll all the way back, you would literally hear my podcast episodes that were so bad, but I was willing to be bad. I was willing. And I also think about the fact that my podcast episodes probably weren't even that bad. I just told myself, oh my God, this is terrible, but I'm going to just close my eyes and push it out anyways, you know? But I'm so glad that I did that, because even if I thought it was bad, at least I was still doing it. And there's always room for us to improve and get better. And truthfully, like, I think you guys just need to learn how to settle for C- work or B- work, you know, and just put stuff out there. If it helps, you can tell yourself, I can fix this later if I need to. That always helps me, right? But because I don't know if it's like everybody who has ADHD has this, but sometimes I can only do one draft of something because I hate going back and like looking at something and fixing it up. I just like being able to put it out into the world and just do it instead of having to change it or fix it up. But before, my perfectionism would really get in the way, because I would be like, well, I'm putting it out and this is the last time I'm going to look at it. This is the last time I'm going to do it before it goes out in the world. But now I just accept myself and love myself so much that I know that it doesn't matter what the fuck I put out there. I get better each and every day, and this is going to change somebody's life no matter what. So I want you guys to get to that place, but if you need to take your time getting to that place, learn how to be okay with B- work. And again, if it helps, tell yourself, I can fix this later if I need to. But from the knowing that you will always be getting better as time goes on. It's the same thing with like copywriting. If you own an online business and you are like, it's my messaging is off, la la la. It's like you will always be working on your messaging. You will always be working on how to say things, how to word things. Just do it. Just do it now. Hey guys, I hope you're loving today's episode. I am just taking a brief pause in today's episode to share with you a client testimonial. These testimonials are either from group coaching clients or clients who are in my one-to-one coaching program. And I can't wait for you to hear how I have changed their lives and their businesses for the better.
Working with Jill, every time she's helped me up-level my business, every time I've been working with her, I've signed my next level, highest paying client. So I can't say enough about working with her and the mindset shifts that she's helped me with. I've gone from having a scarcity mindset and really clinging on to every client I could and not really letting them go when I know they're not aligned with me. But she's helped me move from that into more of a CEO mindset where I'm making decisions that I know are best for my business. Even if it's scary, I know that it's best for me and my business, and she's really helped me kind of grow into that mindset and make the decisions for my business that I know are going to help me long term and keep my business going for the long run.
Thank you guys so much for listening. Now let's get back to the episode. When I was coaching one of my Worthy Woman method clients the other day, I was saying, it sounds like you're on a timeline. And she was like, I am. And I was like, you can't do this if you're on a timeline. You can't continuously tell yourself, we're on a timeline. If we don't sign a client by this date, if we don't do this by this date, then what's the point? Because you are always just going to be zeroed in on that timeline and nothing is ever going to be good enough. So also looking at like your content and what you're creating as compounding over time. And I've talked about this before, but your work is compound interest. You are compounding your work over time that will eventually lead to a result that is going to be so beneficial for you. Just like this podcast, when somebody finds me and like, let's say they're like, okay, I want to like get to know Jill and what she's all about and about imposter syndrome, they can come and find my arsenal of work in this podcast and they can binge all these podcasts, which I hear all the time is like, Jill, I binge the shit out of your podcast, and they can benefit from my body of work. But if I instead thought, well, I've uploaded 10 podcasts and nobody has inquired about my services, I guess this isn't working, that stems from a timeline that I think that I'm on, you know? So essentially, the lesson here today is that when you don't feel good enough, what you create will never feel good enough either. And if you are on your journey to worthiness, I want you to know that you can just start by putting things out, even if it's a little bit cringy. By putting things out, even if you're like, oh, what's the response going to be about this if I say this? Or by putting things out that is just your B- work. Can you be okay with B- work? Even think about the actual grading system and think that it makes so much sense why you feel uneasy about putting out work that you think is going to be judged by people in the online space, right? Because we all grew up in school systems that gave us grading systems. We all grew up waiting to know after we handed something in if it was good or if it was bad, right? But the real world doesn't actually function that way. Everything you do is good enough if you decide that it's good enough. And again, if you don't allow somebody to see your work, then they're not going to be able to determine if it can change their life or not. And if you are an online coach, if you are a service provider, you don't get to decide that. You don't get to continuously tell yourself this isn't good enough. Let somebody else be the judge of that. And guess what? You probably will never actually know what they think. But just as somebody can't judge your work unless you actually put it out there, somebody can't be moved by your work unless you put it out there. And just a small aside too, is like if you're struggling with inspiration or creativity, so you find yourself not purposely copying others, I just want you to know that everything has already been said before and everything has already been created before. And it's okay if you're unintentionally doing that. Just know that it's stemming from a deeper issue. It's stemming from, I don't feel good enough, so I'm looking at this person who seems to have it all together, who seems to know what they're doing, who seems to be signing clients or doing whatever I want to do. It makes sense as to why you're going to see that and feel safe in creating content that is similar to that person because it looks like what they're doing is working. So first of all, you don't even actually know if what they're doing is working. I remember looking at somebody's Instagram like back when I was like really struggling, couldn't sign any clients, and I was like, what the fuck is happening? And I saw this person's page and we had very similar niches, and this person, like, oh my god, they had such good branding and they had a lot of likes on their photos and they had the followers and all this other stuff. And this person reached out to me and asked me a question. And I was like, oh my god, I completely thought that this person had it all together, and they're looking at me thinking the exact same thing. Nobody actually knows the behind the scenes, okay? So that's one. And two, just notice if you're doing that and don't shame yourself. Just come back to, oh, I know this is because I just don't feel good enough. Like, how can I get inspired by them, but make it into my own, create it into my own. And eventually you will be able to find your own voice and your own style, but also realizing that that is a nurturing process. It's the same thing with accepting yourself. It's the same thing with feeling good enough and feeling worthy. It is a nurturing process. It's not something that will happen overnight. This is not an example of you're good enough or you're not. You are always good enough when it comes to art because your art is yours. And yes, if you are a coach, if you are a service provider, whatever you do, your work is art because it is helping somebody, it's moving somebody, it is changing their life, even if it's just in the smallest way. All right, how the frick are we feeling after that episode? I am so excited for the unfiltered mini mind, and I hope that you are too. And if you're wanting to take this work deeper with me, you can apply to work with me in one-to-one coaching or in my mastermind, the Fraud Squad. Those links are in my show notes. And the unfiltered mini mind opens for enrollment on February 12th for just $15.97 or 3 payments of $555. I'll see you next week. Bye. Thanks so much for listening to the From Imposter to Empowered podcast. Head to the show notes to learn how you can work with me, where you can buy my best-selling book, You're Not Special, and how to get on my email list for free. Screenshot this episode and add it to your Instagram stories, tagging me at YourCoachJill. See you next time.